Oh, no, I'm gonna stay. We got Brian.
Welcome to the April 7th, 2025 Zoning Board of Appeals hearing. We have two cases before us, both are appeals and a waiver at the end. I kind of going to go through just a little bit of how we got here on this lot so that kind of everybody knows, because it seems there's a lot of misinformation out there. But this project was created actually by the town. Yeah, it's on, isn't it? Yeah. Okay, so anyways, this project was created by the town for a public need. Basically what it was, we have the school system that, basically is 2/3 of the budget. And so residential, because of the children component, isn't quite paying the taxes, so they wanted to get more commercial property available. So this started as for a town meeting petition to go through. So I just want to point out a couple things here, though. This, when you go to town meeting, it starts at the steering committee. Now, the steering committee, the first time, did vote in favor of this. It went to the planning board. The planning board voted in favor of it. 2 public meetings. It went from the planning board to the select board. Select board approved it. It went from the select board to the finance committee. The finance committee approved it, moved it forward for the 2018 town meeting. From there, it went to COPC, which is just advisory, and to town meeting. Town meeting, at the time, we had 135 taxpayers, their members, and town meeting approved this when they were done with it, but on the way, they had 14 caucus meetings, too. So there's quite a bit of meetings going to that. Now, when town meeting got through with it, it was an approved deal, and they approved the whole project from the land to the financing and everything else. When it left town meeting, it had to go to the select board one more time when they found it, an owner or somebody that would take over the property, because they're the only ones that can do the money part of this. When it left the select board, it went to the building commissioner, but it wasn't this building commissioner, it was an interim building commissioner. And the interim building commissioner, when he got it, he has the right to do incidental or subordinate to, he does have the right to do that. He thought to himself, he said, well, at the time, I think it was 300 and something odd cubic yards. He says, this is an incidental. So he sent it back to the planning board. The planning board, it goes back to the steering committee, and then the second time, the steering committee disapproved it. So they didn't approve it. When it went from there, it went back to the planning board. Planning board approved it. Now it goes to the building commissioner as an approval, so he can issue a permit. So it was issued a legal permit because of that series of events to get there. So from that point, now, when going forward, the petitioners have to prove that there was a legal, tonight, it's kind of an uphill battle. Oh, and by the way, I made that short because Meg's gonna fill in I have her presentation, she'll be filling in the blanks, so. Anyways, so, now it comes to here, what you're going forward is kind of an uphill battle, is, you have to, or not you, the petitioners have to prove that there was a legal or substantial mistake made that, to the point that we rescind the permit. That's one. Two is, the other uphill battle is, you have to have takes Massachusetts general bylaw says 4 members have to vote in the affirmative to overturn the building commissioner's decision. So that's the other part of it. The way this will go after that will be, Attorney Sheehan will be first up when we get there. She will she has no time limit. She gets to present, make her arguments. When Attorney Sheehan's done, we will, and when Attorney Sheehan's done, what'll happen then is then we'll go to public comment. Under public comment, I hope everybody's fairly quiet now, so hopefully everybody both ways are respectable. When you get up there, there's a green light on the thing here, make sure that's bright. The other thing too is state your name for the record, and we'll take comments or questions, but remember, you address them to the board. I'm not going to allow any crosstalk going on between the audience or even Attorney Sheehan during public comment, okay? So, but at the end, if a board member feels that something wasn't quite answered, if you have a question, then I'll allow that board member to question whatever's going on at the time. So those are kind of the rules. I'm just making sure I'm crossing my i's and t's here. Yeah, I'm going to do that at the very end. Then, towards the end of public comment, there's a general public. If it gets repetitive, I'm going to try to let everybody speak that wants to speak. You will have 3 minutes to speak. That's the way this board has always done it. When that's done, the general, when we feel that's time to close it, which either I or a member can, if somebody motions me, then we'll consider closing it. And basically, it'll be the consensus of these three, because if I make a vote, it makes it even, Steven. So, and that will take care of that. Now, at the end of public comment, towards the end, I'm going to let the attorney that is Mr. Pontus' attorney speak at the end of public comment. I'm sure we'll extend his time, but at first, he'll be held to a time limit and we'll extend it. And so I'm just letting everybody know up front. After that, Meg will come back up to rebut it, or if she feels she didn't, touching on something, one of the audience made a comment, Meg will have a second time at that. On this case, it'll be this four sitting before you: Mr. Conroy, Mr. Connors, Mr. Peck, and myself. And let's see. And then, of course, at the end, after both attorneys have spoke, I'm going to bring it back to the board. We'll have a discussion on it. It'll be for board discussion only. There'll be no comments from the public or from the attorneys, and then it'll come to a vote. So, having said all that, it'll be Attorney Sheehan's time right now.
Just want to make sure I know how to work this. Okay.
Hold on, Meg. We read both in when we continued them. Oh, they didn't? Well, we should have. All right, so apparently there was a mistake made at the last meeting, so you want me to read it, or are you going to read it? All right.
So I'll read both of them.
We're going to read these into the hearing because we did read them in the first time, but apparently only one. So we're going to read both of them now.
So will I read both of them consecutively?
Yeah.
Case number 4154. The Town of Plymouth Zoning Board of Appeals will hold a public meeting on March 17th, 2025 at 7 p.m. in the Plymouth Town Hall, Great Hall, 26 Court Street, Plymouth, Mass. 023, on the following petition. Appeal by Attorney Margaret Sheehan on behalf of the following petitioners: Troy Currents, Lakeisha Status, Tony Ferretti, Leslie Jonas, Kitty Hendricks, Melissa Costa, Linda Combs, Jessica Royster, Chelsea Adams, Deborah Igo, Karen Bollinger, Mary Ticker, and Howard Ticketer, petitioners of zoning permit Z-24-1029 and building permit B-24448 issued to Standish Investments Group for 71 Hedges Pond Road, Plymouth, Mass. Assessors parcel map 055-000-024-001 and map 055-000-024-002 in the Cedarville Enterprise Village District, CVED zoning district, the property. The petitioners are appealing the issuance of a zoning permit and the building permit by the Town of Plymouth Inspectional Services Department pursuant to GL 40A, Section 8 and 15, and the Plymouth zoning bylaw, Section 202-7. Petitioners are appealing zoning permit Z-24029 and building permit B-24448, allowing the construction of 176,000 square feet, one-story storage warehouse building, along with incidental earth removal at the property. Petitioners are also requesting a fee waiver pursuant to ZBA Rules Section 3.5. All application material can be found in the case file in the Planning and Development Department. Zoning Board of Appeals. The second case that I'm going to read in record now, case number 4159. The Town of Plymouth Zoning Board of Appeals will hold a public hearing on April 7, 2025 at 6 p.m. in the Plymouth Town Hall, Great Hall, 26, Plymouth, Mass. 02360 on the following petitioner. Appeal by Attorney Margaret Sheehan on behalf of the following petitioners: Troy Currents, Micajah Status, Tony Ferrati, Leslie Jonas, Kitty Hendricks, Melissa Costa, Linda Combs, Jessica Royster, Chelsea Adams, Deborah Igo, Mary Tincher, Howard Tincher, Sybil Holland, William Lawrence, Ellen Russell, Peter Foley, Gerald Gioli, Bobby Martin, Derek Notman, Yana Andrews Klemova, Susan Pledwell, Debbie Murphy, Jack Murphy, Sarah Mahoney, Judith Kayako, Megan Dolbarash, David Ash, petitioners of the Building Commissioner's denial of a request by Community Land and Water Coalition, a project of Save the Barrens, Pine Barrens, Inc., for a cease and desist order to be issued to Standish Investment Group, LLC, Eric Pontiff, contractor, Ryco Excavating, Inc., contractor, Plymouth Regional Economic Development Foundation, Inc., to stop all alteration activities, including land clearing, grading, tree removal, cutting, removal of vegetation, of any other land disturbance of 71 Hedges Pond Road, Plymouth, Mass. Assessors Parcel Map 05500024001 and Map 05500024002 in the Cedarville Enterprise Village District, CBED zoning district, the property. The petitioners are appealing the denial of the Building Commissioner's work pursuant to GL 40A-8 and 15 and the Plymouth zoning bylaw section 202-7. Petitioners are also requesting a fee rate waiver pursuant to the ZBA rules and regulations, section 3.5. All application material is available and may be inspected at the Department of Planning and Development. The petitioner or his or her representative, any other person desiring to be heard on this matter shall appear at the time and place designated. ZBA.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You ready? Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the board. I'm Attorney Meg Sheehan. I'm representing the 29 petitioners in these two cases, 4154 and 4159. These are generally members of the Wampanoag tribe, abutters, and residents of the town of Plymouth. The petitioners are asking the ZBA to revoke zoning permit Z-24-1029 issued by the Director of Inspectional Services, also known as the Building Commissioner, Mr. Silva, on January 16, 2025. The permit was issued to the Plymouth Foundation as the owner and to Rob D'Ambrosio, who is listed as the applicant on behalf of Standish Investments. The site is 35 acres at 71 Hedges Pond Road, known as the Cedarville Conservation Area. As you mentioned, we are asking for a permanent cease and desist because the zoning permit violates the zoning bylaw, section 203-2, entitled Natural Features Conservation, sections A, B, and C, as I will explain in my presentation. Section A is to prevent cumulative damage to the landscape and topography of the town. That's the intent. Under Section B, there are general requirements for vegetation preservation, preservation of topography and soil, and then Part B, C of that regulation is the earth removal regulation. The applicable part here is subpart 3, and The section that's applicable is the Cedarville Village Enterprise District regulation that requires the earth removal to be incidental and necessary to an lawful end use, which has received, and this is the key part that I will focus my remarks on, all the required local and state permits for the use, which end use, meaning the future use of this property, has been fully designed. This is what the site looked like in August of 2024. We have asked for a cease and desist, which we first requested in mid-February, about a month after the permit was issued. The permit was issued prior to the Plymouth Foundation taking title to the property. We have been requesting the fee waiver. As you mentioned, we were required to pay $2,000 in filing fees to get this hearing and to bring this appeal. The work did start in January, even after the cease and desist was requested in mid-February, and today the site is totally cleared. So this is what it looks like today. 35 acres have been cleared over the course of 3 months. The trees were pulled up by their roots, marketable timber sold. The roots and stumps were presumably ground up. The globally rare pine barrens were turned into slash, and the site has been graded as you see here. The building commissioner issued a permit for a quote-unquote unified complex of 4 commercial buildings of 291,000 square feet. A 5th building is actually shown on the plans, so there are really 5 buildings that would bring this up to about 300,000 square feet. The permit entails 35 acres of excavation and grading, filling a wetland with a permit allegedly from the Conservation Commission, and this is being called incidental earth removal for 270,000 cubic yards to dig a hole 90 feet deep across 35 acres for this alleged future use. I'd like to point out that it is also known, the Cedarville Conservation Area, as an archaeological site. It is the great lot of the Herring Pond tribe. In addition to an archaeological survey, which was first requested in December at the planning board hearing, this project required a take permit under the State Endangered Species Act because it was priority habitat for rare and endangered species. The applicant represented to the state in July of 2024 that 135 acres had been put into conservation, permanent conservation, as mitigation for this 35-acre project. That is unequivocally untrue. The value of the sand and gravel in terms of the incidental issue is estimated to be $12 million at today's prices due to the global shortage of rare silica sand like that is found at this site. So that red dot on the map shows where this site is located in relation to the Herring Pond Tribe Great Lot, which is shown in purple. Under the bylaw, the Zoning Board of Appeals has the power to revoke a permit, which is what we are asking you to do, and to issue a cease and desist. And that's under Section 202-3B, which gives you, during this appeal and on this appeal, all of the powers of a building commissioner. It states that you shall have all the powers of the building commissioner and may direct or issue or direct the issuance or denial of a permit. As you mentioned, you are normally a 5-member board with 2 alternates. Under the State Zoning Act, in order to overturn a building inspector's decision or issue a cease and desist, you need a supermajority of the 5 members, which would be 4 votes. However, here today, the chair has recused himself and 2 alternates have recused themselves because Mr. Wallace, one of the alternates, has a financial interest in this property via his family member, who is a member of the Plymouth Foundation, which gave a mortgage to Mr. Pontiff to help finance this project. Mr. O'Reilly, also an alternate on the Zoning Board of Appeals, is a director of the who are directors of the 11-member Plymouth Foundation. So proceeding to the violations of the bylaw. Again, the intent is to prevent cumulative damage to the environment from sand and gravel mining. The building inspector certainly did not consider the cumulative impact of sand and gravel mining in the town under permits granted by this board. There have been dozens of sand and gravel mining permits issued for hundreds and perhaps up to 1,000 acres in this town, including to some of the parties involved in this case. Mr. Pontiff, as you know, received a permit not too long ago to mine a 19-acre endangered species project site in South Plymouth on Firehouse Road. That's one of many permits that Mr. Pontiff has received in this town. You can look at Rocky Pond Road for other permits that he has received. That's what that looks like. It was allegedly for a cranberry bog pond. We also have the cumulative impact right in the Cedarville area in the last 20 years or so. Mr. Landers has mined about 100 acres and about 5 million cubic yards from that area adjacent to Mr. Landers' site and adjacent to the Cedarville Conservation Area. Sandwiched in between the two is 103 Hedges Pond Road, which the Zoning Board of Appeals issued 2 permits for to the Plymouth Foundation for at least 1 million cubic yards. So now you're just expanding the sand mining going to the south in that picture, and it will be over 100 acres of sand mining in that location. So that is one factor that should have been taken into account by the building inspector when he issued this permit, which he did not. The second factor relates to Part B, which are general requirements I mentioned earlier. I won't go into those. Clearly, there has been no vegetation preservation, no topography preservation, and no soil preservation. This site has been clear-cut almost up to the very boundaries of the abutting properties. As to the earth removal regulations, the focus here is that the project is not fully designed and does not have required state and local permits. You can look at Exhibits C and D in your packet, which are the conceptual plans. There are no construction documents for this project. There was an application for a building permit, which is Exhibit C, I believe, and that was, as you mentioned earlier, for one of the 4 buildings. For Building 2, 170,000 square feet warehouse building based on 2 pages of concept plans. There are no construction documents for that. The bylaw says that the project has to have all the permits applied for and obtained for that end use. Well, that one has been granted, but the other 3 have not. As to that permit that has been granted, the building permit for the one warehouse, that has been appealed to the State Building Code Appeals Board because there were no construction documents upon which to base a building permit. So that appeal to the State Building Appeals Board stays that building permit. So there are no building permits for this project. So it's cut and dry under this bylaw, no permits for the end use. And this section of the bylaw was intended specifically to address this kind of a scheme where someone applies for a permit to do earth removal with a vague promise of a project down the line, which we can all see very clearly with the unified complex on Route 3 that was permitted in 2022, and it was supposed to be, by today, a manufacturing building bringing in lots of revenue. Instead, that is a 15-foot, 15-acre, 50-foot hole in the ground that has been blowing sand all over Route 3, according to people who have contacted me about that. So additionally, this points out that there are no construction permits for this. This is the building permit. The zoning application was required to disclose whether there were historic resources on the site. This goes to another permit that was never obtained, a state or local permit that was never obtained. There was information presented to the building commissioner prior to his issuance of the permit that this was a historic site that required an archaeological study. The applicant never checked off that box in the lower right, historic. The building commissioner received written information from the tribes that an archaeological study was required due to the known archaeological features of this property. That was ignored. An archaeological survey requires a permit from the state. That's another state permit that was never received. I want to point out why the archaeological permit was needed. Some historic background. As you may hear from other people tonight, Native American people have been living here for 11,000 years. This is the Great Lot, the ancestral sovereign lands of the Wampanoag people, and the Pilgrims owe their survival to the Wampanoag people. At that time, they were living a lifestyle of hunting, gathering, and fishing on common lands. They did not own lots of land as we identify them today. And in the 1850s, the Massachusetts legislature, apparently missing some of my slides, oh, here it is. 1850 Act of the Massachusetts legislature set up the allotment for the Herring Pond Wampanoag tribe in Plymouth and allotted lots to people, and this map shows who owned what lots. Over time, those lots were lost to history, and one of them ended up as the conservation area, the Cedarville Conservation Area. And that gets to my next violation, which was the violations that occurred when the town failed to follow Article 97 and 3 other laws that require a 2/3 vote of the legislature when you take land out of conservation. This lot, the Cedarville Conservation Area, was put into conservation in 1993 by a unanimous vote of the town meeting. It was put under the jurisdiction of the Conservation Commission. In 2018, the Planning Department recommended the new Cedarville Enterprise District and recommended that the town meeting vote to transfer the land, transfer the land from the Conservation Commission to the Board of Selectmen for commercial sale, apparently with the Plymouth Foundation already in mind. Regardless of what the town meeting voted, that did not exempt the town from complying with Article 97 of the Massachusetts Constitution that requires a 2/3 vote before you can convert conservation land to a commercial use like this. In addition, it required an appraisal, and it required protection of equivalent value conservation land. And we all know that in that town meeting warrant, in 2018, there were 51 lots identified that were supposed to be put in conservation. They were never put in conservation. And in fact, no one can find 4 of the lots, which are apparently phantom lots, and one of them appears to be part of the town dump. So that is not equivalent conservation land. The town manager, the select board, failed to follow that process. regardless of what the town meeting voted, regardless of how many Cedarville Steering Committee or COPC meetings or Planning Board meetings, nothing exempted them. The land was then sold in 2022 by the Select Board without a vote of the Conservation Commission to the Plymouth Foundation for $1, all while 7 of those Plymouth Foundation members were also municipal employees, including the chair of the Board of Selectmen, the town manager, and the town planner who was recommending all of these steps be taken. Massachusetts has a citizen suit law called Chapter 214 7A that allows 10 residents or more to file a lawsuit for damage to the environment when there's been a violation of a law intended to protect the environment. Article 97 is such a law, and notice has been given by over 29 residents of the Commonwealth that they intend to sue to stop the further degradation of this property and to bring an action under general law, Chapter 214 7A. The other red herring that I'd like to point out, a complete deflection that's been happening in connection with this, is the $2 million check from the Plymouth Foundation. Well, yes, the Plymouth Foundation sold the land to Pontiff for $3.4 million, but that was just basically an IOU. The Plymouth Foundation already had $2.3 million in its checkbook, according to its tax returns, much of that from sand and gravel mining, including at the property adjacent to 71 Hedges Pond Road. The Plymouth Foundation claims it is a 501c3 and not a government body. However, it certainly acts like one, and in fact, since 2014, the town of Plymouth taxpayers have paid the Plymouth Foundation almost $2 million to keep the foundation running and apparently to pay for the staff of the foundation. And that memorandum of understanding was just renewed a few months ago, and that annual payment moved up from about $150,000 to, I believe, $175,000. Apparently, this pays the salary of the executive director. So, the next permit that I'd like to point out that was not properly granted, or that certainly, will be subject to challenge, is the permit that Mr. Pontiff and the Plymouth Foundation applied to the Plymouth Conservation Commission for in July of 2024. That was for a wetlands permit. There are a number of issues with that project, with that permit, but I'd like to point out to you that that permit application, signed under oath, under the pains of penalties of perjury and in order to obtain a permit, states that 150 acres of nearby land will be put in conservation and that it has been permanently protected. So 155 acres of permanently protected land were exchanged for 37 developable acres. That is unequivocally untrue. So there's no valid conservation commission. So to wrap up, there's also the question of incidental earth removal. $12 million in sand is hardly incidental. And what the courts look at when they determine the value of the sand versus the value of the future use of the property, they look at the revenue to be derived from that future use. Well, we have no future use. So you have $12 million on one side and zero on the other side. So there's no legitimate way to claim that this is an incidental land use based on the money. That's all my points for right now, and we would respectfully request that you carefully consider this information and revoke the permit and issue a cease and desist. Thank you.
Here we go. Sorry about that, didn't have my mic on. We'd appreciate that. Okay, so now that she's completed, I will go to public comment. We're going to go, we have a rule of 3 minutes apiece. You'll be allowed that. And if the board wants to extend it, somebody's making a point they want to hear, then they can motion me to do that. So, having said that, who would like to go up? Somebody want to speak on the public comment? Oh, really? Okay.
Thank you. My name is Douglas W. Manta, Chief Little Bear of the Heron Pond Wampanoag Tribe. I'm requesting the board to issue a cease and desist order on 71 Hedges Pond Road, part of the Great Lot set forth by allotment in the Acts of 1850. Title to the Heron Pond land was reserved for the Indians, and it is forever an invested entailment. The Hedges Pond property probe's development is subordinate to my Aboriginal rights. I assert my winter rights, both on surface water and on groundwater or any portion of the Great Lot, including but not limited to 71 Hedges Pond Road. For Indian water rights, see Supreme Court case Winters versus the United States. It was established in 1850, water for the drinking and agricultural use. The proposed development cannot usurp my right to any water within the Great Lot. The U.S. Supreme Court held establishment of a reservation necessarily implied the rights to water necessary to make the land habitable and productive. The court ruled the Indians were entitled to enough water for all necessary usage, even if it was small numbers of the Indian population, Arizona versus California. I'm asserting my Aboriginal rights over the entirety of the Great Lot in the following manner: hunting, fishing, fowling, and gathering. Commonwealth versus Michael J. Maxim. The U.S. Supreme Court has consistently upheld off-reservation hunting and fishing rights. The United States versus Winans. The court ruled guaranteed Aboriginal rights if they were on, even if they were on privately owned land. I assert my treaty rights of 1727 and the Treaty of Falmouth of 1749. All treaty rights are federal laws. Native American treaties are interpreted by the reserve doctrine, which means the Indian does not give up any of his Aboriginal rights on land, even if it is conveyed to a non-Indian. United States versus Winans. Furthermore, I assert my civil rights under the American Indian Religious Freedom Act. This is a federal law based on the First Amendment enacted to protect and preserve my religious freedom and cultural practices as a native Wampanoag. The law extends protections to tribes, tribal members, natural descendants, and Indian allotments, requiring all government agencies seeking to promote government policies or goals to eliminate interference with free exercise of Native religion and to provide access to sacred sites. Please review Governor Healy's Executive Order Number 637, recognizing the Heron Pond Wampanoag Tribe. Again, I'm requesting this board to issue a cease and desist order for property located within the Great Lot. Thank you.
Boy, right on the 3 minutes, by the way.
I didn't think I could do it.
Yeah, you did.
I do have in writing a signed
No.
copy that I'd like to
No
submit.
clapping, please.
I have a copy that I'd like to submit, signed to the board. Approach.
You could give it to Denise. We don't take things at the last minute.
Oh,
It is only one copy, so it,
okay.
This is still public comment, correct?
yes.
Ginny Davis, Precinct 4. I'm a town rep. When I saw what had happened to that land, I have a big lump in my throat right now. And I feel guilty because in 2018, I voted for this. And it's because we did not, as town meeting members, request to go down and look at this land. And I think from now on, whenever there's land that's going to be changed zoning, not if it's already destroyed like what we voted on, but pure land like this, we would never have voted that. Never. And I feel guilty. I will carry that because of my ignorance. So, and I know many, many other town meeting members feel as I do. And the whole thing with Plymouth Foundation is very disturbing. That's all I have to say.
Please, no clapping.
Hi, my name is Megan Dahlber Ash. I'm one of the signatories on the complaint or the cease and desist. My husband and I bought a house in Cedarville 11 years ago. We have 3 kids that we are raising under 10. We love the environment that we live in. We love the Hedges Pond Road. We love all the beautiful Ellisville Harbor, the nature around us. And that's what drew us to the area. We did not move there for it to become an industrial site. When I moved there, I actually was thinking it was very similar to the small town I grew up in. That was the charm that drew me there. I was not moving to Exit 5 to live near several industrial parks. I moved there to be in this nature, to be in this environment. And it's one of the few remaining parts of Plymouth that still have that. And when you're developing every single part of Plymouth, you're losing that small town charm that we sell in the first place. We can't be America's hometown or the biggest town when our entire, everything but the downtown area is destroyed. Sorry. And I stopped at the Great Lot the other day, and the destruction there, for the pointless destruction there, the fact that there was a cease and desist being processed, and the fact that they would go ahead and commit that level of destruction, not to mention the level of incompetence that Meg just described in the whole beginning of this. But the devastation there at the Great Lot, this ancestral land, it's jaw-dropping. I actually urge every person in this room to go and visit there at some point, so you can actually, because what was shown there is not, you have to go see it to believe it. It's like end scenes in the Lorax destruction. Like, I was expecting the Lorax to pop out of, it's not even stumps even, it's just clear-cut ground. And it's unbelievable. And it's insulting to the native tribes, and it's insulting to the residents that live there. This was agreed upon 9 years ago. There's a whole different people there now, too. Like, you're not even considering the wants and needs of the current residents there. So the whole thing just seems crazy, incompetent, destroying the environment and just insulting to the indigenous people and insulting to the residents that live here. Thank you.
Another, oh, okay, go ahead, Pat.
See, we respect women, so I'll let her go first.
Good evening. I'm Pat Adelman. I live in Precinct 12, and I'm a town meeting member. I'm opposed to this project because the zoning bylaw 205-18 states that the Cedarville Village Enterprise District is not appropriate for uses that are noxious or offensive due to dust, odor, or other pollutants. The impact from the sand and gravel removal will increase air, noise, and dust pollution, causing troubling vibrations, deteriorate our roads, and add to the unsafe congestion in the Cedarville Village, as well as strict protection to the aquifer. When town meeting was presented this change in zoning in 2018, we were told that the buildings would be light industrial commercial. We kept hearing medical buildings. Now we have a proposed warehouse, lumberyard, ice skating rink. these are not conducive to what we were sold at town meeting. I ask you to stop this noxious project and respect the citizens. Thank you.
Okay, next.
Troy Current, medicine man of the Heron Pond Wampanoag tribe, part of the Wampanoag Nation. I let her go first because she's a woman. We respect all women, like the earth, Mother Earth. That piece of property you put up there where there was trees, my girlfriend and myself went there when this started happening, and we laid tobacco, we left prayers there. That was significant, that was important to us. That is our great lot, that is our home lot. Last time I was here, I read something from our sister tribe, our relatives from Mashpee, about how historic that was. And a half a mile away is our burial ground, one of our burial grounds. I asked for archaeological survey of that property. You guys ignored it. Maybe not you guys, but you're here and representing Plymouth. And I'm here representing my people. I'm here representing my nation. I have people, chiefs, grandmothers, sub-chiefs from Aquina, Mashpee, and Heron Pond, federally recognized tribes. We've come here and spoke. They've sent letters of support. There's an executive order. You guys are supposed to deal with us as a people.
Are you asking a question?
I'm just
I guess
stating the
that's
fact. But I also would like to point out, if you went on your guys' side of the law, and you did the switcheroony like it looks like you guys did, it looks like you guys are stealing your own taxes from your own people. I think I rest my case.
Okay. If somebody else.
Good evening. My name is Slav Tomzak. I am a resident of Cedarville for 21 years, together with my wife. And when we first moved in, it was always a great recreational area, which brought us in and to enjoy the fresh air and so on. But unfortunately, this project,
They can't hear you.
all right, so maybe I will just go back. Slav Tomzak, that's my name. I work as a data analyst. I've been a resident of Plymouth with my wife for 21 years. I had the pleasure of serving on Cultural Council as a vice chair a few years ago, where I was putting my extra time just for no fee, because I do care about this town. And this is really shameful that such a historic area. I do have a master's degree in history, so I appreciate Wampanoag Nation. And to quote our great writer, American writer, who mentioned once that the world does not owe you anything. The world was here first. And these guys and their culture was here first. And we should appreciate it and really embrace it. And thanks to Ms. Sheehan, who presented all these details about what is really going on, I had no clue about it. And for someone who is using critical thinking on a daily basis, this thing is just infused with conflict of interest. And I think your responsibility is, guys, to really be the guardians here and help us out as a residents, not some local oligarchy. That's how this looks like to me, that Plymouth Foundation is just, infused with people with all sorts of financial connections. That's not really helping us as a resident. So I appreciate if you could just think with your conscience about what we are dealing here with and help us to really resolve this by shutting down this whole project. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jonathan Platt. I'm a Plymouth resident and co-chair of the town's No Place for Hate Committee. In case you're not familiar with us, we have been an official committee of the town for over 20 years, actively opposing social, racial, and other injustices. Tonight, I'm here to express the committee's outrage that the voice and input of the Herring Pond Wampanoag, Narragansett, and Mashpee Wampanoag tribes have been ignored during the permitting process for the project at 71 Hedges Pond Road. It is our opinion that by excluding the tribe's input in the planning and decision-making process surrounding this property, and by denying their requests for a comprehensive archaeological survey, the planning board and the building inspector have violated the terms of a document entitled Guiding Principles for Plymouth Staff and Elected and Appointed Officials, which was unanimously approved by the Board of Selectmen on April 2nd, 2013. The third principle in this document states, and I quote, "Be inclusive, collaborative, and promote diversity. Plymouth embraces diversity and encourages full community participation in the decision-making process." End quote. It is our opinion that the planning board and building inspector embarrassingly failed to live up to this principle by excluding Indigenous input. It is bitterly ironic that the exclusion of the Herring Pond Wampanoag tribe's voice and rejection of their request occurred mere weeks after the Commonwealth of Massachusetts officially granted state recognition to the tribe. As Governor Healy remarked at the time, the Herring Pond Wampanoag tribe has been living in and contributing to our Massachusetts communities since long before the Mayflower's arrival. This executive order gives Herring Pond Wampanoag the recognition they deserve. End quote. One big step forward at the state level, one equally large step backward here in Plymouth. Finally, I would quote the words of one of the Indigenous speakers at the February 11th Select Board meeting. He said, "Every Indigenous person has been dealing with erasure since the beginning of this country. If you don't even talk about the archaeological significance of this land, you are aiding in the erasure of these people." I would ask the ZBA, the planning board, and the building inspector, is this the legacy that you wish to leave? Thank you.
Good evening, Chairwoman Melissa Ferretti, Herring Pond Wampanoag Tribe. Once upon a time, in a small village of South Plymouth, Cedarville, two young girls were lovingly raised by an elder of their tribe, Verna and May Harding. These little girls spent much of their childhood exploring the woods of Cedarville under Verna's guidance. These words were their sanctuary, their classroom, and their connection to the stories of their ancestors. They were also where Verna worked tirelessly to pass down the traditional knowledge and the wisdom of their tribe. Through these walks, these little girls learned to forage respectively and how to honor the delicate ecosystem that had sustained their people for generations. Whether gathering, foraging, fishing, tracking, or hiking on foot, we had no car. Verna didn't drive. From Cedarville to Ellisville for fresh drinking water. She used those moments to teach, to share the stories of the land or the wildlife along the way, looking through the eyes of that child today, who is me. Those experiences instilled in me not only traditional knowledge, but a deep sense of responsibility to protect the land and my ancestors that had given us so much. Watching the land at Hedges Pond be clear-cut without even the minimal of archaeological studies required to ensure its integrity is an injustice of its highest order. Those lands hold more than just soil and stone. They hold the stories of our ancestors. Without proper studies, we may never know what may be lost there. As a tribe, our rights are guaranteed under both national and international law, yet they're often ignored here in Plymouth. When we're asked where were the Wampanoag when these discussions began, the answer is both painful and familiar. We were never informed, consulted, or even extended the basic respect of inclusion in this process. Let it be clearly understood, that consultation is not a courtesy. It is a legal and moral obligation, and one that demands accountability and prioritizes the protection of our homelands. Consultation is an opportunity to build trust, to create a partnership with the Herring Pond Wampanoag tribe. By engaging with us meaningfully, you honor the heritage and you show the commitment to preserving the lands for all the future generations. This relationship is grounded in respect, mutual respect, transparency, and shared responsibility. I urge you to act with the urgency and respect this situation demands. Please halt these destructive activities, conduct the study, and honor the cease and desist. Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you for this moment. I'm Tom Ortel from Little Sandy Pond Road, Cedarville. I watched a movie the other night called All the President's Men. It dug deeply into what the CRP, Committee to Re-elect the President, was all about. Seems like the GOP had a lot of money to throw around for egregious things and fed it to the CRP, who did things without any transparency. We're seeing a similar thing with the foundation. The Plymouth Foundation has proven that they can do backdoor deals without any transparency. So I think the citizens of Plymouth deserve to know with some transparency the answer to this question. I would like all of you honorable people to let us know if any of you are or currently were members of the foundation from 2015.
Well, actually, we'll discuss it afterwards. We don't answer the questions.
I understand you don't. I'm asking you to let you all know that we have a vested interest in this. This is a very important vote for us, and knowing the answer to that question would help us understand where to go next. All right, consider my question. Thank you very much. Hope you make the right decision. Good night.
Thank you.
My name is Jill Fagerberg, and I moved to Plymouth in '96. I've learned more about the history of Plymouth from the actual land than I did in the actual school system. So that should say something about, my background, where I came from. I'm still trying to understand a lot of the legal complexities of this, and I have a lot of feelings about this. And to be concise, I joke around and say I got so angry I had to write a poem. So I just want you to listen, consider, and ask yourself, can you really allow this to go on in good faith? Legal or not, I'm not here to comment on that. I'm here to ask you to listen to this poem, and I'm asking to be heard as someone who's amplifying the Indigenous voices. And it's hard to speak up. It's hard to admit when you're wrong. It takes a lot of courage. We saw someone do that tonight, and I applaud that. That's what we need. Hometown greed. The air, it feels so heavy that I can hardly breathe, thick with greed and hatred, compounded by collective suffering. They say you shouldn't slow down, keep pushing through it all. How well has this really served us? Chaos, fear, and emptiness abound. My heart, it's also heavy, filled with hope for unity. Please take a look around, my friend. Recognize the humanity in you and me. Beyond the two-legged bubble is where many fail to see. Everything that surrounds us is sacred, living purposefully in reciprocity. What is the cure for blindness? To love and empathy. Perhaps I'll ask the oak, a dove, or the sea. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Carol Beggs. I live in Cedarville as well. I've lived there for almost 30 years now. And my heart is with all the speakers who have come up this evening But I also understand that the board is constrained by what you can consider and rules and regulations, and that you may have to make that decision based on those. But I suspect this decision is going to come down to the legal points raised by Attorney Sheehan and the mistakes made in the permitting process, and I think there were mistakes, and I think they do have legal weight. I think it's ironic that something that was hoped to generate revenue for the town is probably going to end up costing the town and Cedarville instead because of the lawsuits that are going to release from this. And it's certainly not where I want my tax dollars to go, but I think that's what's going to end up happening, depending upon what your decision is and where that falls with the legal questions. And while I would prefer that my own dollars not have to go to fight for these mistakes, I am prepared to put my money where my mouth is, and I will back those lawsuits as well. So, thank you.
Kwe Kwasan, Natasuis, Makaya Nutama, Sakwana Makapakwe, Wampanoag. Hello, good day, everybody. My name is Makaya Stasis, and I'm from the Herring Pond Wampanoag tribe here in Plymouth, Massachusetts. I just want to acknowledge the Wampanoag people that are in this room. I stand up here not as Herring Pond representative, but as a Wampanoag Nation. And I want to acknowledge that these are the ancestors, our ancestors are in those grounds. So each one of these faces that you see, as you approve these permits, you're denying them the rights to their people, our people. And even though you guys push against us to go against these things, we're here fighting for you as well. We're fighting for all our relations, and that includes you guys. That includes your 7 generations after you. We're not just doing this for our people, but also the four-legged, the winged, the aquaphor, all the people that are dealing with the carcinogens. This is your guys' responsibility and ours as well to represent our people in a good way. And the land is one of them. You know, we say we were put on this land to take care of it. It's a gift. And what gift are we giving it? By demolishing everything. We're supposed to be the stewards of this land. And here, I'd like to acknowledge again, Wampanoag Nation is here to stand for our land and to fight for it. And we will be the original stewards of this land until the end of time. Katapatash.
Wanina Khan, Nataswis Moskota, Newtomas Masipia, Kanatime Masipia. I said good day, evening. My name is Bearhart. I come from Mashpee, live in Mashpee. I'm Brian Whedon. I'm the chairman of the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe. I just want to touch on a lot of the points that have been made. As you know, the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe is a federally recognized tribe. You know, understanding how the laws work and the government works, I understand you have to follow your town bylaws, but you also have to follow the state bylaws, and you also have to follow the federal bylaws. One of the federal laws I would like to point out that I believe is being violated here is the NAGPRA, Public Law 101-601, 25 USC, which was passed November 16th, 1990, which is the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act. What this means is that you have to notify members of federally recognized tribes, and it is on our duty on behalf of the Wampanoag Nation as the federally recognized tribe to protect this. Every other municipality across the Commonwealth contacts the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe or the Aquinnah Wampanoag tribe as the 2 federally recognized tribes of the Commonwealth before they do a project that has to do with archaeological studies and so on and so forth. This is happening right in our own backyard. And it is our duty to speak on behalf of our sister tribes. And it's not appropriate because, you know, you all have been robbing graves for the past 400 years since you stepped off that boat. That's why you didn't stay on Cape Cod, because you were robbing the graves and the corn mounds, and then you came over here and there was nobody here, and that's why you settled here. But enough is enough. If somebody was digging up your grandparents and your great ancestors, what would you do? You know, this has been going on for far too long, 400 years, and what do we have to prove for it? In our language, when I say I am from, New Tomas, it means my blood and my bones is from this land. You eat from the land, you drink from the land, you are the land, and the land is you. A lot of people have to go back to their motherlands. I'm not asking you where do you live, but where is your place of origin? Our place of origin has been here for hundreds and thousands of years, and we ask that we protect this place for the future generations. That's why land ownership was never something that was a mindset of Wampanoag people. We shared the land. One of the reasons we didn't take out your ancestors because you brought your women and children. We didn't bring our women and children to battle. We're not looking for a battle. We've been battling you all for the past 400 plus years. We're just asking that you protect the tribes and protect our rights and our ancestors. And I just want to follow that up and point that out, that that is a federal law that I believe is being violated. Thank you.
Is there anybody else? Yep.
It says use that gavel.
Yeah, I don't even do that. They're not listening.
Keep hanging.
My name is Heather Phillip-Brown, and my family was here from the first boat. I'm so grateful for this opportunity to thank you, Meg, for everything that you've done and anyone that's helped you as well, because I just found out about this a few weeks ago. And I have been waiting for this for so many years to thank the Wampanoag for everything that you did to save my family first boat. My ancestor was born on the boat, and his mother became a widow because her husband died that first winter, and she married Ed Winslow, and it was the first wedding at Plymouth because his wife died the first winter as well. So I wouldn't be standing here if it wasn't for all of you. So much respect for you, and that's why I'm here. I came down from Maine. I printed this because when I saw this, it was jarring, because as I've learned and stepped down this rabbit hole and done a lot of independent research over the past few weeks, this is disgusting. And I feel like this is a no-brainer. And if we can look at this, Pontiff and Cole, they tout about what they've done in Carver and Wareham, and you can see the destruction. And so what I'm trying to do here is point out that and stand here to prevent that from happening here. My family's buried here in South Pond and all over the place. My family, like I said, was here for 400 years, and my uncle was the Reverend of Chiltonville and the fire chaplain for the fire department. And I think they would just be absolutely appalled by this. So I don't even know how the Plymouth Foundation even exists. They shouldn't exist. It should be dissolved. Yeah, they have expressed that this land is low-value land, and I would argue that it is of the highest value. And there's really not much I could add more to everyone speaking tonight, because the points that have been made should be a no-brainer decision for all of you. And I hope that if any of you decide not to vote for the cease and desist, that you will tell everyone why, because to me, it feels like any vote not to cease and desist would mean that you're either being threatened, blackmailed, or profiting off of this. This is from an outsider perspective, and I also speak for thousands of people that can't be here, that have been from Plymouth or lived in Plymouth, and they are absolutely mortified. They're horrified by what we've been learning about. So everybody's watching, not just the people here. Also, I find it really disturbing that I found the open space recreation survey that was done in 2024. The residents don't want this. So aside from the health violations, and I don't know if all of you can open your windows and breathe fresh air, but a lot of people cannot do that, and that is really disturbing as well. I also want to point out to everyone here how Makepeace, AD Makepeace, went from a group of cranberry growers to, once Wisconsin started to grow cranberries, they came through and said, well, now we are not profiting off of cranberries. And then all of a sudden, they have been able to figure out a way, and this has been decades in the making, because they have so much land. This has been their master plan
Excuse me.
all along. Sure.
You've hit your 3 minutes. If the board want to give...
Could I have one more minute?
So I'm Rita Fiorillo. I live in West Plymouth, and I just have one quick thing to say.
Hold on a second.
What? I'm an easel, because we asked for one and you guys couldn't provide one, and so now I didn't speak, and now her time is up, and I was next in line to speak. So
I appreciate that.
What's the big deal?
She's going to have to move away from the podium. Only one of you is allowed to speak.
Could I just finish my statement here?
Half a minute or...
My
Half a
family's
minute.
paid taxes in this town
Just a
for
half a
hundreds
minute.
of years. I think that affords me another minute or two, because I have respect for you as well, because I understand that in the positions that you're in, you're standing between the people that have the money, the funds, the land, the bulldozers, and you're standing between them and everyone that doesn't. And so I can appreciate that you guys are under some pressure, and if you all vote to cease and desist, that you will get pushback. This is not an easy decision, I don't think, but at the same time, it is absolutely necessary. So my question is, to leave this, is when does the destruction end? When all of this is gone? The big mistake about economic development is that you cannot continue to profit and have infinite gains on finite resources. Thank you.
So anyway, I'm Rita Fiorello from West Plymouth, and I just wanted to say, I'm not a lawyer, I didn't pull up any specific laws, but if there are the remains of human beings on that land, there's got to be laws against that, right?
What was your name?
Rita Fiorello, Fiorillo. So seriously, there are dead bodies on this land. Their ancestors are on this land. I mean, that right there, can someone Google what the proper treatment of human remains? Because I don't think that just going and digging them up and grinding them all up like dirt and selling them out to somebody, I'm going to guess that that's probably not okayed. So maybe it's just me. And if it is, then, I mean, I could use some fill, and I know on Burial Hill, there's a whole bunch of pilgrims buried there. So if me and my friends roll over there with our shovels and start, if you see me going to West Plymouth with a wheelbarrow.
Excuse me, hey, that's it. Definitely. I've allowed a lot of things to go on here. I asked you up front that we don't allow, this is a board meeting, and again, is all comments are directed to us, not the audience, not anybody else. I'd like to keep it that way. It's a there you go. That would help. Okay, so is there anybody else? You go ahead.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to provide public comment. My name is Isabella Gamble, and in my day job, I work to move equitable climate policy forward at the city and state level in Massachusetts. Most recently, on the City of Boston's zero net carbon zoning policy and their building performance standard known as BERDO. I also have over 10 years of experience in conservation policy at the city, state, and international levels, including the UN. All comments I offer here tonight are solely my own and in solidarity with all the tribal voices that have spoken tonight. I have 3 recommendations for the zoning board. First, I urge you to honor the cease and desist order to immediately stop all work at the property at 71 Hedges Pond Road, and to honor the very reasonable request of Chairwoman Ferretti and other tribal members for an archaeological site at that spot, particularly looking for ancestral burial remains. I also would urge the ZBA to revoke the building permit for the many reasons that were stated tonight. And second, I recommend that the ZBA work in partnership with the Herring Pond Wampanoag tribe to establish a conservation easement on 71 Hedges Pond Road, which, as you know, would revoke the development rights on that property in perpetuity and would travel with the land title regardless of the legal owner of the land. I would recommend that that conservation easement list the Herring Pond Land Trust, which I believe was given its official documents last week, as the official stewards of that land in perpetuity, as the traditional and rightful stewards of this land that we are all so lucky to sit on. And finally, I urge the ZBA to again work in partnership with the Herring Pond Wampanoag tribe and other tribal members here tonight to look at all remaining undeveloped parcels within the Great Lot, to perform additional archaeological and ecological studies done there, and to see which properties can be put under additional conservation easement, again, under the traditional stewardship of the Herring Pond tribe. Thank you for your consideration, and thank you to the tribal members here.
Okay. All right, well, that is going to end the general public comment now. What you got?
I was sleeping.
Oh, okay, I'll let you go up.
I'm Hazel Currents. I'm one of the elders of the Mashpee Wampanoag
Pull
tribe,
it up closer to the mic.
Herring Pond Wampanoag tribe, and I just want to tell you, You've been living on native lands, and we've been here for tens of thousands of years. I notice you've been a little helpful this time, not as rude as y'all have been in the past. So thank you and have a good evening.
Yeah, this will be the last one under general
Good.
public comment.
There may be others. So I'm Sybil Holland. I'm a town meeting member for Precinct 8. Lift it up. How about that? I think that you gentlemen will remember that at the end of the Plymouth town meeting this past Saturday, Matthew Tavares, the chair of the precinct chairs, addressed the town meeting and said to all of us, quote, "We are all on a path for the betterment of Plymouth." Betsy Hill, a retiring town member meeting whom Matthew recognized for her more than 20 years of service, encouraged all present to work for the good of our friends and neighbors to protect our beautiful town, end quote. That is why I am here tonight, and that is why all of us are here. As you know, the Cedarville Steering Committee voted unanimously against the Hedges Pond project, but the town chose to ignore both the needs and the recommendations of the residents who were most affected by that and sold 71 Hedges Pond Road to Mr. Pontiff. We do not want a skating rink. We do not need hypothetical warehouses of yet-to-be-determined use to be erected on denuded acreage. No one comes to Plymouth to visit an industrial park, and God has no plans that I know of to make any additional shoreline. When our sand, rare and precious and finite as it is gone, it will be gone forever, and it will have been us that sold the excavation right away, and for pennies. I feel that selling this land to Mr. Pontiff, who has no building plan of any kind in place, was a grave error. Further, Mr. Pontiff has no interest in the long-term welfare of Plymouth because he does not live here. His only interest is in his own welfare. So who actually has benefited from this sale and the destruction of the Pine Barrens? It certainly is not our town writ large. It is not the Cedarville community, and it's not these fine people. I do understand that it is not you gentlemen who made the decision to sell the great lot to Mr. Pontiff, land that has enormous cultural significance to the Herring Pond Wampanoag tribe, in addition to being part of Plymouth's natural landscape and watershed. You are not the gentleman who lent Pontiff $500,000 to be able to purchase this land. You are not the gentleman who understood that his intention from the start was to clear-cut those trees, dig up those stumps, eradicate all of the natural wildlife, and leave a gaping hole where rare pine barrens have stood for centuries. I am so very glad that you are the Zoning Appeals Board. That means that we can come to you to make appeals to right wrongs that have been done to us, the residents of Plymouth. And I do appeal to you tonight, fully understanding that reversing course is never easy, especially when you have taken the wrong road and it has been taken by others. I appeal to each one of you, please revoke the zoning permit. Please put in and enforce a cease and desist order, and please restore the land to its natural condition and its rightful owners before the digging of sand and gravel begins and this beautiful land is irretrievably destroyed. Thank you.
Okay, that'll close it for general public comment, and, no. Well, I'm going to ask a general consensus. What do you think?
Mr. Chairman, we have heard repetitious information over and over again. I think if we haven't heard any new facts.
We volunteer to split our 3
I've
minutes.
got the floor, no one else does right now. Be quiet.
Hold on. Excuse me, excuse me.
Ample
This
information
isn't
that
a
we can go
discussion,
from
this is
here.
for the board.
Alderman, protect Alderman. Please, have respect. Have respect, please.
Those who ask for respect need to give respect. And telling someone to be quiet at a public hearing is not respectful, sir.
What do you think?
This whole meeting, I've been moved by...
Hold on a second, hold on a minute. We're trying to discuss whether...
So as a board, we're trying to discuss quorum here, how to speak and how to move forward. So we'd like time for one of the members to address what your thoughts were. And we'd like, when we're talking, we don't want to be interrupted, just like when you folks are speaking, we don't want to interrupt you. So we'd like the common courtesy when one of our board members is speaking, just to hear him out and not to be interrupted. We'll go back to speaking. So I'd like to hear what Peter has to say, please.
I don't have anything else other than to say I think we've heard a lot of the information. We've heard many things over and over again. We understand it. We've read all Ms. Sheehan's information. And we could go on forever with public comment, but that doesn't help us reach a decision on this. So as far as I'm concerned, from my point of view, we've heard enough in public testimony.
I guess my comments are going to be twofold. One is perhaps asking everyone who is against this permit and wants the permit revoked to raise your hands. Oh, thank you. Yeah, and the reason the reason I'm asking is at some point, sort of repetitious comments run the risk of tiring out our feelings and even may work against you. So what I want, deeply respect both the emotions and the historic sensitivity to hundreds, thousands of years of occupancy on the land. But we also need to carefully consider and talk among ourselves the legal points that the attorneys brought up. We also do need to hear from the attorney for the applicant so we can at least listen to it. So, I don't think, more and more heartfelt thoughts about the value and the sacredness of the land is going to change any of your attitudes in the audience, and nor here. We've heard it. We respect it. So I would like personally to close that part of comment and invite the attorneys. It could be both the attorney for the pontiff, but also, as our chair said, Meg Sheehan will be invited back to talk. But I'd like to close this part of it because, again, you begin to run the risk that you wear us out.
I will be very brief, sir. Yeah. I only have one small point to make.
Hey, no speaking. Go ahead.
So I'd like to know how many more people would like to speak. So we have 1, 2, 3. So we have three people that would like to speak in relation to the petitioner. And then how many would like to speak on behalf of the landowner? One? Okay. All right,
Can I just make a point about terminating?
I want to, don't be interrupted. I just want to finish my speaking. So we have 3 more people on behalf of Megan, your folks, and 1 in relation to the attorney. So I'm okay, 3 more on.
All right, so it's my decision, so I will let 3 more people speak. And so you do have the thing.
Thank you, sir.
Sorry, I just want it on the record that it's only 7:30 at night, and this has been delayed and delayed since March 17th, and now here we are. And you can't predict what other people are going to say. To claim that everybody's going to be repetitious is not accurate because you don't know what they're going to say, and everyone should have a chance to speak. This is a public hearing, and a lot of effort and money has gone into making this opportunity available to the community. So I just wanted on the record, and I contacted Attorney Questel before this hearing happened, and I indicated that there were a lot of people who were planning to speak, and that I requested that each person be able to speak and be given 3 minutes. So if you need a break and to stretch your legs.
There were 3 that raised their hands. I'm going to allow those 3.
Thank you, Meg, and thank you, members of the board. I'll be brief because many of the comments that I wanted to make were already stated very, very eloquently by the speakers prior to me. Natasuis Karina, Nutamas, Kamasa Kamkanet, Natai Manamet. My name is Karina. I am a Herring Pond Wampanoag woman, and my home was, is, and always will be Manamet. My family's blood runs in the ground there for thousands of years. Our burials are there. Our history was there. Now, I know that that is not part of the project that we're doing now, but it's a process that I'm afraid is going to keep being repeated. And before we know it, our whole great lot could be destroyed. I would ask this board to remember that we are a government. Our tribe is a government. We are recognized by the state of Massachusetts via Executive Order 637 as a government. I would urge you all to read that order because we have a government-to-government relationship with you. We are not here asking for a seat at the table. We already have one. We are entitled to one. Please listen to us, hear us, see us. We are here. We never went anywhere, and we're not leaving.
Hi, my name's Kimberly Cox. I'm a Plymouth resident. I've lived here for almost 23 years, raised my daughter. I'm an indirect descendant of the Cherokee Indian tribe, Indian nation, and I have due respect for fellow Indian nations. My concern has not been brought up, but it will couple with everything that's been said before. It has to do with a fuel spill that took place not too far from where the dig is now. You are probably not aware of that because it was hushed up. But my concern is for the Plymouth Carver aquifer, on top of endangering possibly former people buried here. You're endangering wildlife. You run the risk. That fuel spill was incidental. They were fueling apparatus. Now that is all cavernous. I've seen the land. The topography makes it difficult. So this equipment could foreseeably puncture a fuel tanker, which is what happened before. There were approximately 1,100 some odd gallons spilled. They tried to dig a hole and bury it. I called the town. I ended up calling the EPA. But it was me speaking up that got it cleaned up. So what's to say accidents don't happen again? Accidents happen. I'm concerned. I'm concerned for wildlife. I'm concerned for ancient burial lands and for just the longevity. These people deserve respect for their homeland, and I would just urge you to strongly consider that accidents do happen. And I don't want my water contaminated any more than it already is. Thank you.
I'm not tall enough for this. Good evening. My name is Jossie Irizarry, and I'm a Plymouth resident. It is abundantly clear that this permit should be revoked immediately, as it was initiated under false pretenses with personal interests involved and zero respect to the indigenous people. Allowing this permit to continue would speak volumes to the lack of integrity and morals of this town. At what point do we stop stripping the land in exchange for money? At what point do we stop trading wildlife for the almighty dollar? At what point do we stop pillaging the land from the indigenous peoples? What has been cleared cannot be undone, but you can take a moral stance and not allow any more destruction. By not revoking this permit, you're proving that you do not represent the people or their wishes, and your morals have a price. So I've said this before, and I'll repeat it again. Only when the last tree has been cut down, and the last fish has been caught, and the last stream has been poisoned, we will realize we cannot eat money. Start doing what's right, not what's easy. Everyone is watching. Revoke, cease and desist.
I'll be quick and I won't be repetitive. Natasui Sienna Nutama Sikwana Makapakwe. My name is Sienna and I come from Springfish Pond, which is also known as Herring Pond. There's been a lot of talk about feelings, and I agree with all of those feelings. It's a heavy topic for a lot of us, Plymouth residents and Wampanoag people. But I also want to point out a fact, which is not a feeling, which that maps place the Great Lot right where 71 Hedges Pond is. That's a fact. That's not a feeling. That is an ancient burial ground, and there is evidence that corroborates that, which would prompt an archaeological study. So we need to follow the facts, not just the feelings.
Okay, that's going to wrap it up for the general public comment. So I'm going to have Attorney Mike Crosden come up to the stand, and this is Mr. Pontiff's attorney, and let him address us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gentlemen, thank you all. My name is Mike Crosden. I'm a partner at Foley & Lardner, and I'm here representing Standish Investment. I'm sorry? Can you all hear me now? All right, thank you very much. I do want to thank you for giving me this opportunity to come speak before you this evening. I also want to thank specifically tonight's chairman, the vice chairman, for making the point earlier in the evening at the outset of this hearing that what we are to do, what you all are to do, is to rule in accordance with the rule of law, and that indeed the petitioner has a burden of proof. And the question before you folks tonight is whether the petitioner has met that burden of proof. That is the burden of proof to suggest to you or to say to you, to demonstrate to you that the permits that have been issued are unlawful. They are not. And while I appreciate all of the comments made by all of the folks here this evening, many of whom spoke quite eloquently, I acknowledge that. The real question is, were these permits issued lawfully? Has the applicant satisfied its obligations with respect to this site? Has indeed the town satisfied its obligations with respect to the permitting here? I want to address, I'm going to try to be as brief as I can. Ms. Sheehan has filed some fairly voluminous documents. I don't, in all candor, think that any of those meet the burden of proof that is imposed on a petitioner in this instance. I'd first like to address briefly, if I could, for a moment, the issue of jurisdiction and the issue of standing. By the way, I've tried to figure out how to do this quickly, and so I wrote down much of what I'm going to say, and I don't mean to look away from you when I talk. I just want to try to do this as concisely as I can and frankly, get out of your way. The question here is, general laws and the zoning bylaw allow certain persons, that is aggrieved persons, to appeal an order. The question is, what constitutes an aggrieved person? I get that everybody in this room tonight feels aggrieved, that they have grievances with respect to what is happening at this site, and indeed with respect to a lot of other things that this is perhaps symbolic of. I get that. But that isn't the question before you folks this evening. That isn't one of the questions before you this evening. And that question is, are they in fact aggrieved for purposes of General Laws 40A, Section 8, and Zoning Bylaw, Section 202-7, Cap A? In order to be that aggrieved person, you would have to be able to demonstrate that you have a non-generalized and non-speculative injury. That is, you don't have an injury that you have demonstrated that you have an injury that is unique to you, that it is not simply an injury to the entirety of the community or respectfully to the tribe, but rather to the particular person who has filed the petition. And that is the standard here. They have not satisfied that standard here. Moreover, the Save the Pine Barrens or Community Land and Water Coalition, as corporations, they haven't satisfied that standard either. At the end of the day, the petitioners here have not demonstrated that they are aggrieved persons within the meaning of the statute. And for that reason alone, this petition ought to be denied. I'll also note this, that Ms. Sheehan, on behalf of her clients, has filed an appeal of the zoning permit and of one of the building permits that were issued. The zoning permit was issued on December 9 of 2024. The petitioner appealed that permit on February 13 of 2025. The law requires that any appeal of a zoning permit, or for that matter, a building permit, be made within 30 days of the issuance of that permit. That did not occur in this instance. The zoning permit, the appeal of the zoning permit was 66 days after the zoning permit was issued. For that reason alone, this petition ought to be denied. That leaves us with one appeal to consider, because there is only one of the building permits that was appealed, and that is the permit for the 176,000 square foot warehouse. It is abundantly clear, emphatically clear, that in the Cedarville Village Enterprise District, warehousing is in fact a permitted use as a matter of right. Petitioners have argued that the zoning permit is invalid and that a special permit is required for incidental earth removal. That's wrong. Simply by looking at your zoning permit, your zoning bylaw, it is easily understood that that is wrong. The earth removal is incidental to the proposed end uses under the definition of incidental set forth in zoning bylaw section 2032 C3 Romanet 2. First, the planning board found that the proposed earth removal is incidental to the project after peer review by firm environmental partners. The proposed earth removal is minor in comparison to the proposed end uses. Earth removal is limited to that which is necessary to grade the site and will be completed in 2 years. The value of the earth to be removed is a fraction of the total value of the proposed site, which Standish estimates at about $100 million when completed. Now, Ms. Sheehan has argued that there will be approximately $5 million in profit, so to speak, from earth removed from the site. That is wrong, and they certainly haven't proved that to be true, but it is wrong. There is about $1.5 million of earth to be removed from that site, an amount of earth, the value of which will not even come close to covering the costs of site work on this site. The proposed end uses are all lawful by right and without a special permit under the zoning bylaw use table. Each of the buildings is a use allowed by right. Petitioners argue that the project violates the maximum lot coverage for the CVED. They are wrong. Lot coverage is defined as the percentage of lot covered by the buildings. 291,600 square feet of the lot will be covered by the buildings, which is just 20% of the 33-acre lot. Petitioners are also wrong that the proposed recreational facility hockey rink is commercial recreation. It is a recreation facility consistent with the use by right under your use table. By the way, I note that with respect to the hockey rink, while I've also pointed out that that building permit was never appealed. The unified complex does not require a special permit and falls squarely within the intention of the CVED bylaw to provide land for a limited mix of of office, light industrial, and commercial uses. The proposed end uses have all required permits. Petitioners argue that the order of conditions issued in August of 2024 is somehow invalid because of a conflict of interest between member Walter Morrison and I guess Mr. Pontiff. The thing to keep in mind with respect to that order of conditions is that it was issued in August of 2024. The appeal period for an order of conditions is 10 days. Nobody ever, ever appealed that order of conditions. Under the Massachusetts Historical Commission, Ms. Sheehan has argued that there was an obligation on the part of the town to bring this particular site and this particular project to the attention of the Mass Historical Commission. That's wrong. The statute provides that in the case that the state is issuing a permit, or the state is providing funding for a project, or the state is transferring land for purposes of the project, then that state body has an obligation to make the Massachusetts Historic Commission aware of the project. And even at that, the standard here isn't, frankly, whether persons in this room, including members of the tribe, respectfully, it isn't whether they view that as their ancestral lands, and I do respect that. However, the statute stands for the proposition that the land that is subject to this review is lands identified in the inventory of archaeological and historic properties in the Commonwealth, and this property is not on that inventory. And by the way, if they really want to know how I know that, I do, but more importantly, the burden of proof is on the petitioner. Next. They have also argued, by the way, that the federal analog to the Massachusetts Historic Commission would require a filing with the federal analog. That too is wrong. The same applies. I'm working on another project in another state right now that indeed requires notification in a Section 106 review under federal law. Why in that case? Because that project has federal funding. In order to be required to report the project to the federal government, you would have to demonstrate that there's a federal permit required, or that there's a federal land transfer for the project, or that there is federal financing for the project. That has not occurred. Neither of those statutes apply in this case at all. Ms. Sheehan has also argued that somehow MEPA applies, and she jumps over the jurisdictional argument to the threshold discussion. But the truth of it is, you never get to an analysis of review thresholds until you first determine whether the project is jurisdictional to MEPA. In order to be jurisdictional to MEPA, it would require a state permit, and as Ms. Sheehan well knows, because she was told just 2 months ago by the director of the MEPA unit, a no-take determination is not a permit issuance. There is no state permit here. There is no there is no state property being involved, being used in this project, and there is not a state land transfer. MEPA is not applicable to this project. Let me see what else we've got here. Petitioners are wrong that the proposed end use is not fully designed as currently constituted. It's simply wrong, and we should look at the permit. If one were to look at the building permit issued, they would see that. Petitioners next argue that a special permit is required for earth removal and the proposed end uses. Petitioners are wrong on both accounts. The planning board found that the earth removal was allowed without a special permit. Bylaw Chapter 203, Section 2, capital C3 provides that the planning board may impose special minimum conditions and safeguards without requiring a special permit. The zoning bylaw use table allows incidental earth removal by right and without a special permit. The zoning bylaw use table also allows each of the proposed end uses for the 4 buildings by right and without a special permit. Petitioners argue that the proposed earth removal and end uses will result in noxious dust, odor, pollution, and therefore is prohibited in the district. Ms. Sheehan is conflating the site work with the end uses. The end uses are all allowed as a matter of right at this site, and the reality is that any construction will require site work. That is just the truth at any project in the town, anywhere, by the way. Petitioners are wrong when they argue that the proposed earth removal is a construction, sand, and gravel processing operation, and they have presented no evidence to support that contention. Respectfully, at some point in one of the documents that Ms. Sheehan filed, she argued that Mr. Pontiff is in the business of earth removal and selling it, like they have argued other agricultural concerns and builders are in town are conducting those businesses as a ruse for earth removal. It is wrong, and they have done nothing to support those allegations. Petitioners make unsupported assumptions about the number and types of trucks and other equipment required for earth removal. Standish has voluntarily agreed to conditions to mitigate any noise, dust, and pollution, as is evidenced by the advisory report from the Planning Committee to the Building Commissioner. Petitioners have also made an unsupported assertion that the proposed excavation will disturb toxic materials in the neighboring landfill and cause water pollution. Standish is not performing any excavation on the landfill and has shown on its site plans that excavation and grading will not disturb neighboring sites. And I just want to reiterate that the petitioner's assertions in this case, and candidly in all of these, are unsupported by any evidence to support them. It's just the case. Petitioners argue that filling the isolated vegetated wetland on the site will cause pollution because there is no information about the type of material to be used to fill the isolated vegetated wetland. To the contrary, Condition 22 in the Order of Conditions, issued on August 4th of 2024, provides that the fill will be clean and contain no trash, no refuse, no rubbish, no debris. And I will reiterate that the petitioners had 10 days to appeal that Order of Conditions from August 4th of 2024, and never did so. Petitioners argue that the project does not meet the site plan review guidelines. Again, petitioners are simply wrong. The Planning Board found that the plans are in accordance with the guidelines. Petitioners have done nothing to suggest that the Planning Board's findings are wrong. Petitioners have argued that the sale of the subject land to the Plymouth Foundation violated Article 97 of the Massachusetts Constitution. That's wrong. The Article 97 addresses takings by the state and states, in fact, that if it is taken for a particular purpose and that purpose is to be changed, it has to be supported by a 2/3 vote of the general court. Fine. That's not what this land is. This was land owned by the town. It was not taken. And Article 97 is simply inapplicable. With respect to the cease and desist argument, bear with me if you don't mind. Excuse me. Petitioners have argued that the building commissioner erroneously denied their February 14, 2025 request for a cease and desist directed to Standish to immediately cease work at 71 Hedges Pond Road. In addition to the reasons set forth above, for ZBA Appeal number 4154, petitioners argue that the permits are invalid and that a cease and desist letter should be issued because Standish does not have a valid title to the site. Standish does not have valid zoning or building permit. The building commissioner unlawfully ignored requests for an archaeological study. The building commissioner has failed to require compliance with the planning board conditions. And the building commissioner exceeded his authority by entering into a memorandum of understanding with Standish that is inconsistent with the bylaw. Each of those allegations is wrong, and they have done nothing to demonstrate otherwise. That's really all I have for you at the moment. I'm happy to answer any questions. If I've missed something, please ask me, because I tried to, if I may. I'm sure you do.
Any questions for him? David? No? You? No? Okay.
Gentlemen, I really want to state emphatically, I really did try to keep this short. This longer document would have taken us until 10 o'clock for me to talk to you about. Every single one of the allegations that have been made is wrong. They have not been, and they have not met their burden of proof with respect to any of them. And the permits ought to stay in place as issued. I thank you all very much for your time.
Thank you. Ms. Sheehan, Attorney Sheehan?
Not unexpectedly, Mr. Pontiff's attorney has generalized and tried to bring in other cases that are irrelevant to this, and I will refrain from responding to his muted personal attacks. But we have met our burden of proof on absolutely every issue. We have shown that there is no fully designed end use for this project. That is what the bylaw says, Section 2032, which I put up on the slide. It has to be a fully designed end use for which all permits have been applied for and obtained. We did a public records request, and the one permit that Mr. Silva gave us, the one building permit, was for one building. He just told us that there were 3 other permits, building permits that have been issued. Well, I would like to see those. The one building permit that Mr. Silva provided was based on a 2-page conceptual document. It does not meet the state building code. I have been through the building code line by line to see what constitutes construction documents for a project of this size, for any project. This project did not qualify for a building permit. 2 pages, Exhibit D, in your packet there. So there's no way that this project is fully designed and has applied for and obtained all the permits. There's no water. There's no sewer. The DPW said that there is no water for this project. That's right in the DPW, in your packet. That is one of the requirements for obtaining a building permit. So there is no building permit for this project. We appealed the building permit. As I said, that stays the building permit. So for that point alone, there is no building permit. This is not fully designed. That point was made to the planning board by Mr. Abbott and several other attorneys during the planning board meeting back in December. The planning board ignored that. The planning board did not have any authority over this at all, except to make a recommendation. And among the things that they did was ignore the request from the tribe, from Melissa Ferretti, for an archaeological survey. As she said, that tribe is a government. It doesn't matter at all whether the Mass Historic Commission has listed the Great Lot on its inventory. You have a government that came to you and said, this is my archaeological tribal land. We request an archaeological study. You had the Mashpee Tribal Historic Preservation Officer ask Mr. Silva for an archaeological study. Ignored. You had the Narragansett Tribal Historic Preservation Officer ask you for an archaeological study. Ignored. It doesn't matter whether Mr. Crossan looked it up on the inventory and it wasn't there. A lot of things aren't on that inventory. It doesn't mean that they are ignored. And as for funding, oh, there's plenty of federal funding here and plenty of state funding. As Mr. Brindisi will tell you, this project is going to have mitigation in the form of the $2 million for all the traffic improvements. So there's federal funding. There's $8 million of federal funding. As I put in the letters that I sent to you from the Tribal Historic Preservation Officers, citing to that federal funding. So on that grounds alone, the federal laws were invoked, both the National Historic Preservation Act, the NAGPRA Act against digging up bodies. They've all been invoked. And in terms of missing the deadline for the appeal of the building permit, that's totally inaccurate. Unless Mr. Silva is not providing accurate documents to the public, members of the public met with him in December, and he said the permit had not been issued. The permit that he gave me had an issue date of January 17th, and we filed this appeal on February 14th, well within the time frame. As far as the Conservation Commission permit, Mr. Crossan's totally wrong. He's citing to the state law that requires the permit to be appealed in 10 days. What Mr. Pontiff did, his client, is go and tell the town that the state law didn't apply and they only needed to apply under the bylaw. Well, under the Wetland Protective Bylaw of the town of Plymouth, the appeal deadline is 60 days. And as I showed you in the language in that permit application signed under oath, it was based on a falsehood, a claim that 150 acres had been put into conservation as mitigation for this destruction. False. You can look at that picture right there of the site, and you can see that every condition of that order of conditions under the wetlands permit under the town bylaw has been violated. There are no erosion control barriers. Everyone's been out there. You can see it. There's erosion all over the place. So that permit will be subject to an enforcement appeal for sure. In addition, I'd like to point out that the staff report to the Conservation Commission from Mr. Vaca, the conservation agent, Mr. Vaca, and his staff stated that they disagreed with Mr. Pontiff. In fact, they said the State Wetlands Protection Act does apply because there's a bordering vegetated wetland there under 310 CMR 10.55. And I can go on and on about the defects in the Conservation Commission permit, but I can assure you it was not issued under the state law, as Mr. Crossan claims. As far as the 2/3 vote, that has been researched by numerous lawyers, not just myself. And that is why we sent out this notice of intent to sue letter. Pass that around. Hopefully you have a copy of that. That's in your packet. That is based on in-depth research, that this property was put into the jurisdiction of the Conservation Commission under Article 97 and 3 other state laws. It could not be taken out of conservation unless you went through that process. So, as I said, urge you to look carefully at that. Mr. Pontiff does not have legitimate title to the property under that argument. And as far as standing, of course, legal standing is the first line of defense of any developer who wants to get rid of an appeal, right? Tell the people they don't have standing. They're not harmed. No one's harmed by this project, of course. Well, the petitioners in this case include people who live 50 feet away on Admiral Halsey Road and Admiral Rickenhauer Road. People who have withdrawn from the appeal because they have already suffered harm and they're so upset, they have told me they don't want to be in the appeal anymore because they can't take the trauma from the suffering that they have endured as a result of ripping 35 acres of trees out of the ground, roots and all, and doing stump grinding on the property. So we have legal standing. People have already been harmed by the noise, by the vibration, and the trucks. So that's another red herring argument that you should disregard. We have proven our burden of proof. Our letter is detailed. I can go on and on about how a recreational use under the use table, line, whatever it is, requires a special permit. But the bottom line is, for purposes of this vote, there is no fully designed project. All the permits are not in place, there's no water, there's no sewer. Thank you.
Huh? I don't think you should. This isn't, should I allow him to speak again? Legally? Fine. Okay, I'll give you 3 minutes.
This will take me 30 seconds.
Oh, okay.
I would respectfully ask that you look at the special permit. It was issued lawfully, and it has satisfied all of the requirements for that issuance have been met. The reason I really wanted to get up and make this point, two more points. Ms. Sheehan is wrong with respect to the federal funding as to this project. It doesn't apply to this project. It is wrong. However, one more point, if I may. Ms. Sheehan has just argued that the order of conditions wasn't a state order of conditions. The order of conditions is right in my hand right now. And on page 12 of 13 of that order of conditions, it in fact notes that any aggrieved party had 10 business days from the date of issuance of the order to appeal it. It did not occur. That's all I had for you, gentlemen. That's all I had for you, gentlemen. Thank you very much.
Okay, at this time, I'm going to ask Jason, do you have any comment on this?
I think given the circumstances, I'd just ask if you
Use
have...
the mic, please.
You on mic on?
It's on, yeah. So I'd ask if the board has questions, I'd address those questions.
Okay, well...
If you'd like, I can give you a brief timeline from inspectional services. That's something I'm prepared to do. I just don't know what the board has interest. So from inspectional services standpoint, this project came to us in May of 2024. We received a zoning permit application for a unified complex. At that time, inspectional services referred them to the planning board for determination as to the unified complex, as the zoning bylaw indicates. So shortly after that, December 3rd, the planning board met, provided a site plan review as well as a determination, provided that determination to us on December 5th, indicating that they had reviewed the application and that it was incidental, that it met the bylaw, and then we moved forward, issued a zoning approval, and then shortly after, on January 16th, issued a building permit aligned with all of the previous permitting scenario that started in May of 2024. So again, inspectional services saw this project from May of 2024 through permitting in January. We had those reviews, a zoning permit review. It was sent to planning. Planning reviewed it. Planning board reviewed it, provided a determination to us. We aligned ourselves with permitting with that determination. So that's essentially where it's at.
Okay. Amy, anything from you?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The only thing that I would add is that I think that there were very, very excellent points that were brought up. However, you are a board of limited jurisdiction. You are the Zoning Board of Appeals, and you have jurisdiction essentially over the zoning bylaw. So there was quite a few points that were brought up that, while could be extremely valid points, they are not within your purview. And so that would be things such as the Mass Historical Commission, MIPA, the CONCOM. All of these points are not within your jurisdiction. The other thing that's important to note is that if there is a question with regard to the Massachusetts State Building Code, that is also not within your purview. There is a Building Code Appeals Board that I actually think that Ms. Sheehan has already applied to. So any so-called or alleged errors in the fact that the building code was not followed, that again is not before you. There's also a request for a permanent cease and desist, which is something that's something that you cannot give. So there's a few flaws in that.
Okay. Any questions? David? Pete? Ed?
So Amy, one question for you. The petitioner has brought up the fact that a architectural study...
Excuse me, point of order. We don't know who was just speaking.
Oh, I apologize. My name is Amy Quessel. I serve as special town council.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Dave.
So you just brought up what the board has jurisdiction and what the board does not.
Point of order, please use the mic. We cannot hear.
Attorney Kessel, so one of the ideas that you just brought up that we don't have jurisdiction over is, my concern is in relation to the architectural study and whether certain things were followed. Archaeological. Is that in our purview?
No, in my opinion, no.
All right, so what's important to understand, that in relation to that study, we don't have the jurisdiction to make a determination on that issue. Also, in relation to the end use, Attorney Sheehan is saying the fact that the plan did not have an end use when it was filed is cause for this permit to be invalid. And one, is that under our jurisdiction?
So in accordance with the zoning bylaw, that end use, but however, it appears from what I heard that the end use, it's a warehouse, which is an allowed use in that zoning district. So therefore, it's an allowed use, which is why there's no such thing as a permanent cease and desist, because if it's an allowed use, it's allowed. And a warehouse is allowed in the CVOD.
Okay. Jason, in relation to that end use issue, because I think that's an important piece here, due to the fact that the warehouse is an allowed use for this site. The fact that the permit did not specifically, my understanding, didn't specifically state that the end use is going to be a warehouse.
Oh, no, that's inaccurate. It does state that it's going to be a warehouse. There's 4 individual building permits that were issued for 4 individual specific buildings, with each one having a use that's called out within the permit language. It's very specific. If you note, my building permit, which is unusual, includes a significant amount of text to be very specific so that there's not a misunderstanding as to what's expected from an applicant as well as what's expected to submit to us. And we see projects that many times, as an example, Amazon, that are called design build. So many times there are concepts for plans that might not be finalized, that we issue permits for, and then as the project proceeds, those plans are then finalized. There could be fire protection details that can't be figured out until flow issues are resolved. There could be permits for other incidentals that aren't issued until they get to those stages. So on a very large project, it's unique. We need to be somewhat flexible in order to allow these projects to move forward, because it does take many years to build out this much project. So we do have 4 building permits that have been paid for, that include plans, that include sign-offs from all of the other departments within town, recognizing that water, sewer, and all those things have to be obtained to get occupancy. In the building code, it's clear to allow us to issue permits when we have these sorts of scenarios, but we are not allowed to issue occupancies until those things are completely recognized. You build a house, I give you your building permit for the house, but your septic system's not in the ground yet. I don't give you an occupancy on that until the septic system's been signed off by the Board of Health that it functions. So is that to say that the septic system's not fully permitted? No, that's not true. I still give the building permit as long as there's the capacity, the possibility to put a septic system in the ground. If there's public water out in the street, then somebody's likely to get a building permit because they can tap that. They may not have water at the time of the permit issuance, but they have the capability of doing that. Again, they would not receive occupancy until all those things have been actually affirmed by those independent agencies, the Board of Health, the Sewer Department, and whoever be involved.
Thank you.
Any other questions from anybody? David? No? Okay, I'm going to bring it back to board deliberation, and that'll be the end of public comment and from the lawyers. If the board member wants an answer for something, he can request it. So that's that. Now we're back to deliberation. You want to have a comment, Ed? Or not yet? David?
Yes, and it's simple. We've heard a lot of testimony, heartfelt testimony, but also legal testimony both ways. But I'm going to go back to the definition in our bylaws for the Cedarville Village Enterprise District. And that, I'll read it, Cedarville Village Enterprise is intended to provide land for a limited mix of office, light industrial, and commercial uses appropriate for development near residential neighborhoods. The special permit provides for review and decision on a case-by-case basis for certain development proposals. A few more words. I see that a special permit should have been required on this project just by the bylaw definition. So I am going to, when we come to a vote to cancel the permit, because at the very least, I will also point out, as the attorneys have, in terms of the jurisdiction of the building inspector for zoning permits that don't require a special permit. It does need to go first to the planning board, who just recommends, but then the building inspector has to look at it and say it has to be objectively necessary or incidental to the lawful uses, not of a scale or characteristic to require special conditioning, such as heavy equipment, vibration, dust, or vehicular traffic. This site does, is otherwise in compliance. And then they also says, or the earth removal is occurring on a property in light industrial, this is light industrial, and it's necessary and incidental to a lawful use that has received all required local and state permits. We've heard that. I'm not convinced that we haven't yet. And it has to be fully designed. I agree. From what I've seen, it has not been fully designed. For the purposes of this section, incidental shall be defined as meeting all of the following: is minor in significance to the primary use. I'm not convinced. Is commonly established as reasonably associated with the primary use, perhaps. Is necessary for the primary use, yes. Does not conflict with the intent of the section, but is minor in its net effect to the principal use. And again, I'm not quite convinced. So between the basic definition of the CVED that literally has in the second sentence a reference to requiring a special permit, which has not been met, plus the judgment that the building inspector applies, I feel this project needed a special permit and did not get one. So I am voting to revoke the permit.
What kind of cooks the goose?
Well, I have a question for Jason. Special permit, didn't the planning board give one?
No, there was no special permit issued by the planning board. The planning board provided a site
Just
plan
a
review and advisory position.
Okay, so it wasn't, yeah, okay.
Well, the issue is David has voted to not enforce this, and so whatever we say is meaningless anyways.
No, David was...
No, the way I understand it, all four of us, the supermajority has to vote to override the permit. I'm only one voice right now. It needs to be unanimous to cancel the permit.
He's
Right?
voting to, you're voting in favor of the permit, is what you...
I am not.
A petitioner.
I'm voting, yes, in favor of the appeal.
Right, okay, that's what he said.
Oh, is that clear, Ed?
Yes.
Okay.
So when I look at this, the burden is on the petitioner. And whether the building commissioner provided that such a determination was reasonable and supported by a rational basis. That's the burden of proof. So the petitioner has to prove that what the building commissioner did was not rational, that there was no basis for him making these decisions. Which is a very, very high burden for the petitioner to meet. So looking at this fact pattern, I don't think the petitioner has met this burden. I'm going to support the building commissioner on this issue.
Peter?
David makes some good points, for sure, but I think I'm in about the same spot that Ed's in on this, that I would support the building commissioner's decision. I'm talking into the mic.
Well,
I don't want to eat it. You done? When everyone's quiet, then I'll say what you want me to hear. I said, in this position, I said, David has made some good points, but I still believe, as Ed does, that the burden has not been proven, that the building commissioner made any mistakes.
There's no discussion, that we're in board discussion, this is it. And myself, I also agree, I can't support the petitions, because I felt he has done a good job going forward with it. I also feel that, this has had so much public input from the beginning. The time for what you people wanted was the planning board was the one that had the most jurisdiction and could have done something. You've come to us now, we have laws and rules that we have to follow, and I feel the same as Ed. I don't think that you've met those, and so thereby, I'm going to vote the same, to support the commissioner. So, with that, we aren't going to have the votes, but I do want to take the votes. So, do I get a motion? We'll have to do both, but.
Should we do one motion for both cases?
How do you know?
So
Amy,
Amy thinks we should do.
Excuse me, Amy.
You should do two separate motions, one for each case, please.
So we have to make a motion in the affirmative.
Okay, I will make a motion to support the appeal in 4754. 4154.
Is that the first one? Yes. Okay.
You need a second, right, too?
Yep, second. Who wants a second?
A second.
Okay, vote. All in favor of the petition? All those against?
Uh-oh.
Okay, then,
Trouble in the meeting.
David, do you want to make the next one? Oh, do you have the numbers? Yeah.
Let's see.
David. Yeah, that's one.
Okay.
The second one's right there.
Yeah. Okay, I will also make the motion to support the appeal on case 4159.
And second? Ed seconded. In favor of petition, support the petition?
Yes.
Okay, then for the building commissioner, supporting the building commissioner? There we go. Okay. Then the only last piece of business is the waiver for the money. Do I hear any comments or?
I will make a motion to waive the two fees for $1,000 each.
How does the board feel about it for discussion?
Can you please use the mic?
Either one?
Transparency.
Any discussion on that waiver?
Please use the mic. We cannot hear what you're saying. Mumble.
Nobody said anything yet. Okay, good, go ahead.
I don't feel the fee should be waived. It's taking too much time.
We need a second, right?
No, well, we haven't made the motion.
I think the $1,000 fee is adequate.
Okay. And on my opinion on that
Be
is.
quiet.
Hey. I've given you a lot of leeway during this hearing, so let's keep it. My opinion on this is, one is, we've already used up the money just on staff for legal interpretation, everything else. And I can't see that we should waive it. I mean, they did get a fair hearing, we put up with it. And we've spent just about, I'd say, we've spent it on just staff meetings, so. You want to make a motion?
Yeah. I'll make a motion to waive the $2,000 fees.
Do I hear a second?
I'll make the motion.
Second it, Ed'll second it. Are we gonna- So, all in favor of waiving the fee? All those against? Done. That completes the April 7th, 2022 Zoning Board of Appeals meeting. Thanks for coming.